Essentially, if you look at India, the government spends about $200 billion a year to make sure that communities have social protection. But if you go into communities, you notice that's not getting there. The government is overwhelmed with the amount of work that they have already. And those social systems are essentially broken. So what we're trying to do at Swaniti is essentially go into communities, figure out what is the gap in making sure those public services get there, and then working to make sure that that gap is overcome.
ज़्यादा करके खेती हमारा
किस किस चीज़ का फसल वगैरह होता है यहाँ पे ज़्यादा?
धान होता है, गेहूं, वही पानी के व्यवस्था नहीं होता है तो वही कहीं कहीं मतलब यहाँ तकलीफ कर रहा है सर। मतलब किसान आदमी है, कभी पानी हुआ नहीं हुआ, बहुत कोई काम यदि होना है 10 किलो तो होगा 5 किलो, मतलब उसका व्यवस्था सही नहीं मिल पा रहा है हमारा।
What ends up happening a lot is the central government essentially says we're going to give out money. The state then says, great, I will design how to distribute the money. And then the district essentially says, now let me go ahead and make sure it gets out. But what ends up happening is when you go to the last mile, when you go to a district, there aren't the resources, the people, the understanding, the kind of feedback that you need to make sure that those resources are being effectively deployed.
फिर पानी के इरिगेशन से रिलेटेड समस्या नहीं आएगी।
कंपनी अगर वो उसका मोटर चेंज कर दे तो सर तो
इसके लिए भी बात किया जाता है।
पाइप का डायमेंशन बढ़ेगा तभी जब हॉर्स पावर बढ़ेगा। 5 या 7.5 हॉर्स पावर का
Swaniti comes in to say, we will help you get that feedback from the ground. We will do one better. We'll bring in skilled people to help you identify what the gaps are. And then we'll work with you to figure out what the solutions for those gaps are. We do a data collection when we go into a community.
ఎన్ని ఫార్మ్ పాండ్స్ 10 farm ponds also identified.
What would be a focus group discussion or connecting with community leaders is also in the form of a survey and actually understanding what is happening. It's very different in each community, but the framework of why those gaps exist is fairly consistent. So rather than take a solution and say, these are the things I will do, it becomes, these are the steps I will take. It's all about going in and saying, you tell us what doesn't work in governance, and we'll work with you to help overcome that. Then we'll kind of see what kind of impact that's had. We'll take the government data and say, how much more money have you released now than you did last year? How many more people are now accessing the program according to you? And also simultaneously go into the ground and see, is this matching up to what we're seeing from the administration side? Has that tangibly resulted in improved lives? We have a system which is addressing whatever the demand is of the community. In Andhra, for example, we worked in a district of Srikakulam. What we saw was mass unemployment there. We had a local NGO who said, we'll come in and help build capacity on how do you plant trees here and what kind of crops do you need to create. So we connected the dots where we had employment which was generated with this community. We had an NGO coming in and saying, we'll help you figure out what to plant and how to do it. And then we had the government say, we're going to help partly fund the NGO, but then also procure back what is being produced. We ended up also launching a program called Jano. And what the Jano app does is essentially it's the Yelp for public services. And I, as a farmer who's supposed to get a loan to procure crops, can actually put in a review saying, this is why I'm not getting the loan. And so what we're doing is essentially taking that feedback, going to the government and saying, this is what is working for you and this is what is not. And these are the 5 ways in which you can streamline the process to make sure everyone has access to those programs. So what you'll see is essentially how that community feedback is happening, what the government is taking in terms of feedback and how they're correcting the programs. And then at the end of the day, redesigning the process to make public services more accessible.
వీళ్ళందరూ కూడా ఏంటంటే భూమి లేకపోవటం వలన వేరే పనులు లేక వ్యవసాయ పనులు లేక ఇబ్బంది పడుతున్నారు. వాళ్ళు కేవలం మన ఉపాధి హామీ పథకం మీద మాత్రమే ఎక్కువగా బేస్ అయ్యి ఉంటున్నారు. అంటే వాళ్ళు ఏమైనా సమస్యలు ఉంటే మండల ఆఫీస్కి 10 కిలోమీటర్లు 20 కిలోమీటర్ల డిస్టెన్స్లో ఉన్న మండల ఆఫీస్కి వచ్చి వాళ్ళు కంప్లైంట్ రైజ్ చేయవలసి ఉంటుంది.
అందుకోసం మేము ఇంట్లోనే కూర్చొని మా సమస్యలు క్లియర్గా చేసుకుంటున్నాము.
ఈ యాప్ రావటం వలన వాళ్ళ గ్రామం నుండే సమస్యలు అన్నది యాప్లో అప్లోడ్ చేసినట్లయితే దానికి సంబంధించిన పరిష్కారం మేము ఇమీడియట్గా చేయడానికి అవకాశం ఉంటుందండి.
In a place like Jharkhand, one of the things which we realized was post-COVID, there is a huge migrant influx which has happened. What we're doing is we're essentially going in there and saying, how do we make sure that small landholding farmers have the economic wherewithal to not just survive but thrive?
पहले तो पानी का प्रॉब्लम था, पानी नहीं होने के कारण थोड़ा खेती कमज़ोर पड़ जाता था.
हमारा जो ईंधन में पैसा इन्वेस्ट हो जा रहा है, वायु प्रदूषण बनता है.
दिन रात हवा चलता है सर, इतना गर्दा उड़ता है इनकी कहना नहीं. खेती बाड़ी भी नहीं होता, आदमी भी प्रॉब्लम होता है सर.
तो हम लोग को जब से मिला है प्लेट, तब से खेती बहुत अच्छा से हो रहा है, भरपूर पैदावार भी हो रहा है.
गवर्नमेंट के माध्यम से जो भी हम लोग को मिला है, इससे बहुत खुशी की बात है कि जा कर के मात्र स्विच डालते हैं, स्विच देते हैं और पानी निकलना स्टार्ट होता है.
And so what we've done is worked with the community to understand that things like irrigation, solar dryers, things like making sure there's proper connectivity to the markets is something that exists. Let's go ahead and make sure that there's the financial investment which comes in. There is the partner who kind of brings in the resources which are required to make the solar panels happen, and then the community that will essentially maintain it. Change is not just possible. I think we're seeing change happen a lot. And if you look at how many more people are coming out of poverty today, the result is right there. Things are improving. It is getting better. And, go out there and work with them.